Do you know what they're complaining about? I bet you can't even guess. If you're not across this story already, I bet you can't even imagine what these vicious, vile individuals are complaining about today. But they're definitely not racist. Definitely not racist. Oh, no. No. We'd be this disgusting about anybody if they held hands on their way out of church. That's patriotism for you, according to Meghan Markle's critics. That's reverence for royalty for you, according to Meghan Markle's critics. That's commitment to the monarchy for you, according to Meghan Markle's critics. A man who has suffered the unimaginable pain of being compelled to walk behind his mother's coffin in the eyes of the entire world, held his wife's hand as they came out of a ceremony that would have brought back memory after memory after memory of the worst day of his life, or the second worst day of his life after discovering that he'd lost his mum. Now flip it, right? And look at it from her point of view. A woman who has been exposed to more abuse from the British media than anybody else I can think of. And I am not exaggerating when I say to you, I would include child killers in that analysis. In terms of paragraphs dedicated and pages counted, vicious, vile criminals have received less abuse and less criticism from the British media than the daughter-in-law of the new king. And she's back in the spotlight, back in the crucible where she knows every single sniff and comma will be attacked as if it were an affront to the entire nation. A woman whose wedding bouquet was described as potentially poisoning her bridesmaids because it contained identical flowers to the bouquet carried by her sister-in-law, the wife of Prince William. And guess what happened when she had the cameras pointed at her? Guess what happened when the eyes of the British media and elements, disgusting, shameful elements of the British public that treat her in the most unimaginably horrible way? Guess what happened when she found herself back in that spotlight once again? She took her husband's hand. And I will never know where these people get off unless you tell me.
The British media's treatment of Meghan Markle represents a watershed moment of systemic racism and targeted harassment that exposes the most grotesque underbelly of institutional prejudice. Where hardened criminals might receive measured reportage, Meghan has been subjected to an unrelenting barrage of character assassination, racist dog whistles, and calculated psychological warfare designed to break her spirit and drive her from the royal landscape. The tabloid machine, with its insatiable appetite for sensationalism, has transformed her very existence into a spectacle, dissecting her every move with a malevolence that goes far beyond legitimate journalism. As James O'Brien astutely observed, these media ghouls and vampires have created an echo chamber of toxicity, attacking her most human moments, like holding her husband's hand, with a viciousness that reveals more about their own moral bankruptcy than about Meghan herself. This isn't merely criticism, it's a calculated campaign of emotional terrorism, weaponizing press platforms to marginalize and destroy a woman who dared to challenge the suffocating conventions of an archaic institutional framework. The media's relentless assault, Meghan Markle's unprecedented scrutiny. In the tumultuous landscape of British media, Meghan Markle has endured a level of vilification that defies comprehension, facing a barrage of criticism so intense and unrelenting that it surpasses the treatment afforded to some of society's most notorious offenders. The daughter-in-law of King Charles III has been systematically targeted by a predatory press corps that seems intent on dismantling her character, dignity, and very existence within the royal framework. While vicious, vile criminals might receive cursory reporting or occasional sympathy, Meghan has been subjected to a sustained campaign of character assassination that reveals the darkest, most toxic undercurrents of British tabloid culture. The vitriol directed at her, rooted in a complex matrix of racism, xenophobia, and institutional prejudice, represents a form of media persecution that goes far beyond legitimate criticism, transforming into a calculated and ruthless attempt to marginalize and destroy her public persona. The media's disproportionate assault, Meghan Markle versus public criminals. The British media's relentless campaign against Meghan Markle reveals a disturbing paradox, where she has been subjected to more savage scrutiny and public vilification than individuals who have committed genuinely heinous crimes. While actual convicted criminals, those who have perpetrated violence, fraud, or other serious offenses, often receive more measured and restrained media coverage, Meghan has been systematically targeted with a level of venom that exposes the underlying racial and cultural biases permeating British tabloid journalism. The stark contrast is not merely a matter of journalistic overreach, but a calculated strategy of character assassination that seeks to delegitimize her presence within the royal ecosystem, employing tactics that would be considered unconscionable if applied to individuals with actual criminal records. This unprecedented media onslaught against the Duchess of Sussex demonstrates a deeply troubling narrative where her mere existence, as a biracial woman who challenged royal institutional norms, has been portrayed as more transgressive than the actual criminal actions of public figures who have genuinely breached societal trust. The media's relentless assault. James O'Brien exposes the cruel tabloid vendetta against Meghan Markle. In a scathing critique that cuts through the toxic media landscape, James O'Brien, the renowned British radio host, has fearlessly called out the ghouls and vampires of the British tabloid press, who have been mercilessly attacking Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. With surgical precision, O'Brien highlighted the grotesque disparity in media treatment, pointing out that genuine criminals have received far more compassionate coverage than the daughter-in-law of King Charles, who has been subjected to an unprecedented and ruthless campaign of character assassination. His powerful commentary exposes the shameful vendetta that has transformed Meghan into a target of systematic abuse, revealing the dark underbelly of a media culture that profits from manufacturing outrage and perpetuating harmful narratives against those who dare to challenge the traditional royal narrative. The media's relentless assault on Meghan Markle, a study in systemic harassment. The British media's treatment of Meghan Markle represents a shocking descent into a realm of unprecedented vitriol, where the most mundane human expressions of affection, such as a simple gesture of holding hands with her husband, have been scrutinized with a level of malevolence that would make even the most hardened tabloid journalist blush. The criticism leveled against her has far surpassed any reasonable journalistic standard, transforming from mere reporting into a calculated campaign of personal destruction that exposes the deeply ingrained systemic racism and xenophobia lurking within certain segments of the British press. These media ghouls and vampires, as eloquently described by James O'Brien, have demonstrated a disturbing predilection for attacking a woman whose only apparent crime is loving her husband openly and challenging antiquated royal protocols, while simultaneously revealing a grotesque double standard where violent criminals have historically received more measured and compassionate coverage than this intelligent, accomplished woman who married into the royal family. The toxic landscape of British media. Meghan Markle's relentless tabloid persecution. The British media's treatment of Meghan Markle represents a dark, systematic campaign of orchestrated vilification that transcends mere journalism and enters the realm of calculated character assassination. With surgical precision, tabloid outlets have weaponized every aspect of her identity, her race, her American background, her independence, transforming legitimate news reporting into a weaponized narrative designed to marginalize and destabilize her position within the royal institution. The power of these media platforms to shape public perception has been grotesquely demonstrated through their continuous stream of inflammatory, often fabricated stories that paint Meghan as an outsider, a threat, and ultimately an unworthy member of the British royal family. This calculated approach reveals a deeper, more insidious mechanism of institutional racism and xenophobia, where a woman of color is systematically stripped of her humanity and reduced to a convenient target for media sensationalism. proving that the British tabloid ecosystem operates with a level of cruelty that would be unacceptable in any other contemporary professional sphere. The relentless media assault on Meghan Markle. A tale of systemic persecution, the British tabloid landscape has become a merciless battlefield, where Meghan Markle has been systematically targeted with a level of vitriol that defies human decency. The sheer intensity of media scrutiny and calculated criticism directed at her has transcended mere journalistic reporting, morphing into a calculated campaign of emotional warfare designed to destabilize and marginalize her. As a woman of color who dared to challenge the traditional royal narrative, Meghan has been subjected to unprecedented levels of racist and misogynistic attacks that would be considered unconscionable if leveled against any other public figure. The psychological toll of enduring constant malicious narratives that seek to deconstruct her character, undermine her achievements, and question her very right to exist within the royal ecosystem has been profound. Unlike other public personalities who might receive occasional negative press, Meghan has faced a relentless, coordinated assault that speaks volumes about the deeply entrenched systemic biases within British media culture, revealing a disturbing willingness to sacrifice an individual's mental health and human dignity on the altar of sensationalism and racial prejudice. Media's toxic crusade, the systematic vilification of Meghan Markle. The relentless media assault on Meghan Markle transcends mere tabloid gossip and reveals a deeply troubling systemic pathology within British media culture, where racism, sexism, and classism converge to create a weaponized narrative designed to destroy an outsider who challenges institutional norms. The vicious coverage goes far beyond journalistic scrutiny, representing a calculated campaign of psychological warfare that exposes profound societal inequities, where a biracial American woman who married into the royal family becomes a lightning rod for every unaddressed prejudice lurking beneath Britain's veneer of civility. Indeed, as commentators like James O'Brien have powerfully articulated, the British media's treatment of Meghan represents a grotesque spectacle where ghouls and vampires in newsrooms have targeted her with a level of sustained malevolence that would be considered unconscionable if directed at actual criminals, revealing not just media bias, but a systemic rot that privileges institutional protection over basic human dignity. The media's relentless assault. Meghan and Harry speak truth to power. In a powerful and unapologetic stance against the British tabloid machine, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have systematically dismantled the media's malicious narrative, exposing the deeply rooted racism and institutional bias that has systematically targeted Meghan since her entry into the royal family. Their response has been nothing short of a strategic counteroffensive, utilizing platforms like their Oprah interview, Netflix documentary, and Harry's memoir Spare to illuminate the toxic media ecosystem that has sought to destroy her reputation and mental well-being. By candidly sharing their experiences, they've revealed how the British press has weaponized racism, sexism, and sensationalism to create a relentless campaign of character assassination, making it abundantly clear that Meghan has been subjected to a level of public scrutiny and vitriol that far exceeds any reasonable journalistic standard, and which would be considered unacceptable in any professional or personal context. The media's relentless assault Meghan Markle and the British press crucible. The ongoing saga of Meghan Markle's tumultuous relationship with the British media represents a watershed moment in contemporary public discourse, where systemic racism, institutional prejudice, and media manipulation converge in a spectacularly toxic narrative. As commentators like James O'Brien have forcefully articulated, the unprecedented vitriol directed at the Duchess of Sussex exposes a deeply troubling undercurrent within British media culture, one where a mixed-race woman married into the royal family becomes a lightning rod for collective societal anxieties and deeply entrenched xenophobic impulses. The relentless campaign of character assassination, which has far exceeded the standard scrutiny applied to public figures, reveals more about the machinery of media manipulation and institutional racism than it does about Meghan herself. With each sensationalist headline and fabricated controversy, the British tabloid ecosystem continues to demonstrate a grotesque willingness to deconstruct and vilify an individual who has done nothing more egregious than attempt to protect her family and maintain her personal dignity in the face of extraordinary public pressure.